pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for December 12th, 2017. Duane, I know you don't see my video feed, but I have a little blackboard here saying 13 days until Santa comes. But for a lot of our listeners and Toronto fans, Santa came yesterday apparently.
Well, it's Saturday, I guess more accurately, but
the parade. Santa arrives in a parade usually, so that's how I was like, Santa's probably there yesterday.
Yeah, there you go. I got you. Yeah, no, it was. There was certainly some magical people at the end of the parade with a magical thing called the MLS Cup. No, it was a lot of fun.
Magical drinks and magical microphones. Yeah, Josie. If you get a chance,
Josie.
I don't have the Josie speech queued up, but I think I'm going to record it, and I think I'm going to have it queued up for posterity at least.
Sure, it was quite funny, and I was getting a text message from an Impact friend of mine last night who there was a little bit, and I like this person quite a bit, so I'm going to say this carefully, but there was a little bit of salty tears there about how pathetic it was that Josie was still talking about the Impact. He was just talking crap you hammered in, and the same thing would happen with Odoro. There's lots of Impact players that would do the same thing. So that's not kidding.
Lovitz. Poor Lovitz. He leaves Toronto. They win the time he leaves. Come on. Poor Daniel Lovitz. I feel bad for him.
It was, I'll tell you what, we were waiting because basically they were very smart about the microphone situation at the parade at the after part there. Only the very thoughtful people there. And Michael Bradley could have 16 shots of tequila in him and still sound like he was,
Well, when you look at does he have any Irish blood in him? Because kind of seems like he does.
Yeah, but yeah, he probably does there. But he's very stoic, and even when like I said, he probably had a lot of champagne in him, but he was still very this is just a very special moment for us, and he's very, very professional in every way that he presents himself. Whereas Josie did a mic drop basically, and that was everyone. As soon as that speech started, I just started to laugh, and I tweeted out, and Josie's speech coming down the pipe in 3, 2, 1. Yeah. There were 16,000 cameras in the air filming it.
Yeah, and a lot of cameras on stage too. It was quite impressive, and I had to say, the parade was to broadcast on TV. It was on TSN, and it was quite interesting to see the city celebrate its team. I haven't seen a parade in Toronto ever. And I have to say, I haven't seen one in Montreal in a long time, I have to say. I was there in 2001 when the Alouettes won the Grey Cup, but I don't think it compares. And I don't think the Argonauts parade, more rally was a few weeks ago, I don't think it compares to yesterday either. And I think, has soccer made it here so far? The famous, when will soccer make it here? When will soccer? Well, it made it here.
Yeah, well, pretty much that's my pinned tweet. If anyone saw my photo, my selfie, that's where I experienced the parade from. So I was directly in front of USEC, which is the group that I've associated with for many years, who was the very first group in front of all of the supporters groups, which marched all together directly in front of the TFC bus. So I was essentially I wasn't the first person in the parade because I had a whole bunch of I don't even know what they were, BMO people, I think, probably that were.
There were BMO people, the 416 drum crew and people like that.
Yeah, but when the actual fans got in, I was the first one there, so I had a great view of it. It was a little surreal, and the parade route started out, I wouldn't say sparse, but it wasn't a ton of people. There was people along the way when we passed Union Station and stuff like that. But as you got further up Bay, when the people were getting out from their lunches, from the financial district folks, and especially as you got towards the Old City Hall there, it was unbelievable to turn that corner and see that many people wearing red and cheering it on. And now look, I'm not under any delusion that if the Leafs Stanley Cup parade would ever happen, that you'd have to shut the city down because there would be so many people. But it surprised me how many people came out, and it was not to make this an Argos versus TFC thing is, but I don't think there's any debate anymore about who the fourth most popular team in this city is.
No, I would even go maybe It's fourth, yeah, because the top three, which you would be the Leafs, the Raptors, and the Blue Jays, but the Blue Jays continue to struggle. Well, let's just face it.
This is a pretty big Blue Jays town.
Yeah,
I would argue
but
that I would actually argue the Blue Jays might be more popular than the Leafs if you
all
look at
right,
overall
fine,
numbers, but that would include all of Canada.
true, but
But yeah,
you know what was interesting to me? What Stephen Caldwell, I know you didn't listen to the broadcast of the parade because you were right in the parade, but
yeah.
one thing you and I talked about, and it's easy for us two white males, white, and I'm in the 30s, in your early 40s, and it's easy for us to say that, look, this fan base, and I know Montreal fan base as well, and I've been to Toronto many times, and I've been in the stands in Toronto, the press box, same in Montreal. And I'll use both example, and I think it's true. Maybe I'm extrapolating here, but I think it's true for the rest of the league too. This is the real Toronto. This is the real Montreal in the stands of the Saputo Stadium. It's the real Toronto in the stands of BMO Field. The same people that you see in the streets, the diversity, the cosmopolitan aspect, the different cultures, that's what you see at Toronto. And maybe that's the one thing we feel more with soccer clubs, and I'm using Toronto as an example, and I'll use Montreal as well, is the inclusivity. We include people. We don't just want our crew, it's everyone. This is everyone's teams if you're from that market. This is for you. And the look, the feel, the diversity, the cultures, it is 2017 after all, and it's fun to see it arrive in the stands.
No, for sure. There is, especially compared to, probably Blue Jays too. Blue Jays and Leafs are it's a white crowd. Let's be blunt about it.
Let's call a spade a spade. That's what it is. It's the Leafs, majority of, we're extrapolating, generalizing here, and this is not a Toronto podcast, but there's a difference of crowd. There's a difference of a corporate crowd or a crowd that goes there because they have the opportunity and the ticket has been given, or there's a difference in the fervor of the fans. I think that's where it comes from. When it's true fans, and I'm not saying the Leafs are not true fans, but when it's true fans, you get that atmosphere, you get that commitment from the fan to yell, to scream, to bathe in that ambiance,
No, yeah, and let's get away from ethnicity and
that's what I was going to
race here for a second. Yeah, and talk about FES, talk about socioeconomic status. This is a fan base that obviously if you can afford money to go to soccer, you're probably not at the very low end of the FES sort of platform, but you can be middle class, you can even be working class and afford season tickets to TFC, and lots of people are, whereas you can't even be upper middle class and afford Leaf season tickets, right? And that makes a difference.
You say season tickets? I was talking about one game for the Leaf is more expensive than the price of the entire season for TFC.
Well, anyone who wants to go to a hockey game in the city knows that forget buying platinums or whatever. You could save up and over 3 or 4 years and do that and maybe spoil yourself. But if you want a real experience, go to the very top of the purples and stand in the standing rooms because you're going to find Doug and Mary from Peterborough who saved up for a year to get their one Leaf game, right? And
what did Doug and Mary do to you? Why do you single them out? What did Doug and Mary do to you? Poor Doug, poor Mary. Let's say hi.
Well, not that I purposely use the word Peterborough too, because that's the other part of it too. Is if the Leaf Stanley Cup ticket or parade happened, they basically if they did an aerial shot, you'd just see millions of people flowing in from the 705 and the 905 and the 519, right? That's what would happen. I mean, not to say there aren't Leaf fans in the city proper, but it is just much more, much more 905, much more suburban kind of fan base in many ways. But look, it does certainly, I think, represent a truer slice of Toronto than other leagues out there, and that has as much to do with the finances as anything else. But putting that aside, it was just that's in the days that have passed. I've listened obviously to a lot of the interviews, a lot of reactions from general sports media to TFC winning because it's always curious to see their perspective on it. And
you mean everything we've been saying for the last 2 years? They say in 10 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but it always comes back to us. It always comes back to the fans and how these fan bases, and they always kind of know sort of the names of the Unabriati or whatever. They make things up the Red Patch Kings, things like that. And
the Red Patch of the North.
Yeah, exactly. The Northern Kings. Anyhow, they they talk a lot about how the fans have fueled things. And then that said, there was an interview, and I actually encourage people that are listening to this. Toronto, this is a Toronto-centric thing, I understand, but Toronto won the MLS Cup final, so I think this week I'm allowed. I encourage KFC fans to listen to Bill Manning's interview on the Fan 590 and be a little scared and keep the pressure up, because one of the things that was kind of coming through is how they might be raising tickets a little bit. They talked about, the average ticket price is $45 in the stadiums in there. Maybe we could bear a little bit more. Like, come on, man. Like, this is MLSE's instincts are coming out. So
we won.
Careful.
Let's jack the prices. Come on, you're gonna come back.
Yeah.
Let's jack the prices.
They're set for next year, but yeah, we'll see.
We're gonna be a long ways away from year one pricing that came back in 2013.
I think we might sneak back up to that 400 level before it's too long in the South End. And look, I can't. 400 is not bad, but for a year.
Yeah.
But it's still,
in the supporters section, it is kind of expensive.
Well, yeah, because I think when you're looking at a sports second pricing, you've got to really factor in that next generation stuff. Like the old guys are still in there, like me and a few others, right? But and eventually we're gonna move back further, and then maybe I doubt I'll ever completely move out. But
maybe you go sit down. Eventually, you're like, I can't stand anymore. I'm gonna go sit down here.
Yeah, but I'm in pretty good shape right now. But that's I got a few more years in me. But no, you've got to really factor in that 22-year-old, and that's the other thing you hear a lot about in the days ahead, or the days that passed, I should say, that someone's going to see that. A kid's going to see that. An 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, 15-year-old is going to see that and go, I want in. And that 15-year-old, when they get that summer job in a couple of years, maybe they can afford $250 for the year, and then they've captured them for the long term. And ultimately, if they're smart about it financially, if you want to be cynical here for a second, you're going to get a hell of a lot more money out of someone if you keep them in the stadium for 10 years at $250 plus all of the auxiliary.
Plus $20 a pop, $20 a beer, plus scarves.
Yeah.
And, you're going to get them for life.
Exactly. They're going to get more money than maybe getting one fan in there that is willing to pay $600 for their tickets, but they maybe don't have any beer, and they maybe only buy one scarf every 5 years versus the hardcore. So you got to be careful about stuff like that.
Well, obviously,
the South is,
I'm sorry, Duane, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna go ahead.
I was saying the South End, if you know business stuff, a loss leader is what supporters tickets are. You're losing money on the initial inventory, but you're making it way back in the money they're going to spend in the store.
Yeah, it's like those free games on apps. Like, just get them in there, and then they're going to do some microtransactions. Buying beer is a microtransaction. Just get them in the game.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's fun time. Season's over, though, and there's no time to breathe. I hate that about MLS. But
Sunday morning, there was trades. Like, I woke up, I'm like, geez, trades. Kamara's gone to Vancouver, and we have other trades too. DC United, and there's LAFC being. I was like, yep, MLS Cup is over, MLS season is over, and already the off season has begun.
Is it wrong that I literally laughed out loud when I saw Kamara was traded to Vancouver?
They needed a replacement for Montero, and Montero was paid highly. So let's get another player that's really paid highly and hasn't panned out, at least in the last 12 months.
Yeah, let's get an older, less skilled version of Montero that has a bit of a name within Major League Soccer, so that we can appease our fans a little bit. It's the day after, the day of the parade. Well, the day before, Toronto, one of their rivals, has a parade, and they're going to do the same stuff that they're always doing. It's the same old Whitecaps, always being in the middle. Obviously, I'm on top of the mountain right now. But if you're a Whitecaps fan, are you really that excited by a 33-year-old that has never really been that successful, other than 1 year, and then the following year he essentially caused a team to destruct?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man, that's not gonna be exciting for you. And I think this is just a sad move, unless they have something else up their sleeve.
Yeah, unless they set up properly. The thing is, when you have a Kai Kamara in your team, you need to play in a certain way to get his strength, to get his skill set at the right place at the right time on the field to be used properly. And that wasn't done in New England the last few months. And I think it might, depending on how they play, and that's no offense to Whitecaps, but He's
He's a
33. It's
33-year-old can play.
it's a bit old to be like a old ball type of striker that can create opportunities as well, and to be used as a more simple route one type of tactics in the play that he brings. He might be old to be that type of striker, but who knows? There could be some fit there. But there's going to be a lot of trades as well today, Duane. So how about we take a little break? Let's look at the list and come back and talk about.
Sure. Real quickly, I wanted to say, Whitecaps fans, you know what you should terrify you? That move reminds me of something TFC would have done in 2013.
Yeah, that's
okay,
true.
we'll take the break now.
Yeah, we can take the break now. The mic has been dropped, and we're taking a small break.
You mind if we hear some tunes? Hey, that'll work. You got any Christmas music? This is Christmas music.
December 24th on Hollis Ave at the dark. When I seen a man chilling with his dog at the park, I approached him very slowly with my heart full of fear. Looked at his dog, oh my God, a ill reindeer.
And I just wanted to take this opportunity to wish all of our listeners a very happy holiday season from the Two Solitudes and the Five Rings podcast. From both myself and Kevin, we wish you all the best.
Santa Claus. Yeah, Duane. You know, sometimes it's fun for me to hear your voice in bumpers outside of mine, because for years it was always my voice.
Yeah. Well, that was filmed. That was taped on the infamous iPod too. I remember doing that one. But it
Still sounds pretty good though. It's one of the only ones, like old school bumpers, that I can still use and not destroy people's ears.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was we taped that one on the original. So that would have been about 10 months after we started, because we started in February of 2014. That was our first podcast together.
Yeah. Coming up on close to over 500, 600 shows, I think. Anyways, it's a lot. It's a lot. Speaking of a lot, today, expansion draft, Major League Soccer, LAFC will have decisions to make. 5 names can be chosen, only 1 per team, and you stop at 5. Duane, when you're looking at LAFC and Bob Bradley and what the crop of players they have in front of us, first of all, are we going to see a bit of what we saw from Atlanta last year, which wasn't always picking players outright and wanting them to be part of their squad? No, it's picking players that have value, that you can deal with them. It's players that you can know have a value somewhere else, that you can offload somewhere else, like a Chris Duval in Minnesota back then. A lot of those things can happen today. Do you think it's going to be a old style expansion draft where just a team picks 5 names and go home and looks at what they can do? Or do you expect more of an Atlanta style expansion draft with LAFC might do a little bit of a trading today?
Yeah, I think that the era of building through an expansion draft, as Minnesota maybe so willfully or unwillfully proved last year, is over. The way to do it is to get money so that you can go into those other markets and deal with it. And that can be a lot of different ways. Obviously, you can get more TAM money, so you can get that kind of TAM player. You can get more GAM money to sort of like use internally to bring those domestic players into. And I think we forget about that too. GAM can be used quite effectively to get those MLS lifers, to get those players that maybe in the past that you would have looked for on an expansion list. There's also going to be trades. That I think I'm pretty confident in saying. Even just reading between the lines, I'll go back to that Manning interview. Again, it was on the Fan 590. It was on Primetime Sports last night. And don't worry, McCowan haters. He was off, so it wasn't McCowan doing the interview. Bill Manning was kind of, he talked about the expansion draft, and he said, we're probably, quote, unquote, probably going to lose someone tomorrow in the expansion draft. And that suggests to me that either he is, maybe he's just assuming, but it also could mean that there's an arrangement in place already. And that's what they did last year, and that's something that Bezbachenko is quite adamant about doing, is to have control. If you're going to lose something, you want to control who you're losing. We'll talk about Toronto in a minute, but certainly it's just unfortunate. I hate the fact that you have to. Yeah. I hate the expansion draft so much. I think it's just unfair. Why are we doing this exercise when all they want is the money anyway? Hell, give them a little bit more money and let them build that way.
Yeah, and you had one last year with 2 teams. You're going to get one this year, and guess what? There's going to be like 3 others in the next few years, expansion draft too. So I think we got to get used to it.
Oh yeah, well obviously. It's going to be the norm because they like it and they like, I get it from a marketing perspective, I guess. Although, really, who's paying attention other than people that like us? And most of the people that pay attention hate it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's true. All right, let's do a quick exercise. Quick. There's 23 teams, I know. And there's a maximum of 5 players that can be taken, and you cannot take more than 1 per player. So let's just go quickly.
There's only 22 involved because it's
true. Yeah,
LA's not going
fine,
to take them off
fine.
itself.
LA's not going to pick a player from itself. Okay, I get it. But let's just go through the rosters. We'll mention a team. Let's mention one name of their unprotected roster that we would like to take. We will have a list of 23. Let's pick 5 of those after. So we'll go quickly. Let's start with Atlanta, Duane. When you're looking at Atlanta's success this season, it has been made in part by players that was taken as well, though. Like a Jeff Laurent, which I think was really important. But, of course, you have the Almiron, the great players, Villalba, Garza, there's Gonzalez, Carmona. There were a lot of great players. Martinez, of course, Josef Martinez. But when you're looking at the unprotected list, any one name jump out at you?
I would take a run at Jacob Peterson if I was going to take anyone off of that. He's getting a little on, obviously, but I think you can get him pretty cheaply. And he has proven to be a pretty useful player off the bench, although not so much last year. But in terms of a depth player of a 12 through 18 player on a roster, he might not be a bad option on an expansion team.
Now, Chicago. When we're moved to Chicago, we have a few names that are known as well in the unprotected list. I'm thinking of a Michael Deleu. I'm thinking of maybe a Jorge Corrales. Is there any player that you would take in this very short list of unprotected players for Chicago?
Deleu's probably the best on there, but you've got to be careful with the internationals. To be honest, I'm looking at that list, and if I'm Chicago, I'm pretty confident I'm escaping the day without losing anyone based on this list.
Yes, and that's because let's not forget as well that homegrown's designated player are automatically protected, so that takes a few names out of there as well. Colorado Rapids. We're going to go there really quickly because they're not going to lose anyone. There's nobody in that list that I would take. How about you?
Louis Gill, maybe. But yeah, no,
maybe
there's
Gill.
not a lot coming out.
Maybe Gill, you're right. So I'm just going to write it down because it could be. It's a name, quote unquote. But is there enough value in that name to maybe get something out of it? I don't know. But now going to Columbus. Columbus list is pretty high because of their lack of homegrown players. Only 2 on their roster. Now, in this list of Columbus players, there's a few names that if I was maybe LA, I would get for different reasons. A player in here that had some success, very, very sparsely, but has a bit of a name, has experience, is a striker, played in California before. Yeah, it was a little northern up, but Adam John, a.k.a. Pillow Feet, for me, could be maybe a player that maybe would be selected by LA, but it would be in a depth, maybe a second striker type of situation.
I'll go similar, but kind of a journeyman defender that had a decent season in Josh Williams might again be a good depth defender, good depth center half for a team. And that's something they're going to need. I mean, getting depth in the defensive positions is a tough thing. So whenever you see center half that's played any consistent minutes at all, you have to consider the possibility that they might pick him. So and maybe I'm just TFC biased there because of course he played for TFC last year. But
he was chosen by Montreal in the first expansion draft for Montreal. So Josh Williams, he has experience in the expansion draft. Now, DC United, and I think it becomes interesting here because yes, there's free agents. There's Sean Franklin, Patrick Nyarko that could be tantalizing choice, but there's one name on there, Duane.
I'm taking Hamid. You have to.
It's from the bottom, 4th from the bottom. He has like a last name that looks like a first name and a first name that looks like a last name. Lloyd Sam.
Yeah, why?
Lloyd Sam is going to be picked today for sure.
Or Bill Hamid.
Oh yeah, Bill Hamid. Jeez.
Yeah.
But wow, Bill Hamid unprotected. That one, I can't explain it.
I actually, the reason I would be willing, if I had to bet one player is going to be taken from this entire list, it's Hamid, and I think he's been left unprotected purposely, and there's a deal in place. So he might get picked and then traded back. That's what I think is going to happen here.
Well, that would make sense, and but that would explain maybe why if you put Bill Hamid out there as the the one player that'll get attention. Maybe you can put a Lloyd Sam that you are confident won't be taken, but who knows? Maybe LAFC is going to surprise us today. But yes, Bill Hamid, but Lloyd Sam as well, I have to say. A surprising player on this unprotected list. Now, FC Dallas. Looking at the roster here, there's a few players here, but there a lot of internationals, so a lot of free agents too.
And free agents.
And
there's not a lot on there because
Yeah.
by the time you look, it's not that they're not going to pick an international; they're just more likely not to. This is more of a domestic situation here. Looking at this, Tiba Harris is probably your best player in there, but he's a free agent, right? So if they pick him, they're basically if you pick a free agent, you're only getting the rights to negotiate with him, like off the top, right? Like it's, and I'm trying to think, I'm thinking out loud here. You might not even get that. So it's kind of like a no-brainer to leave your free agents exposed, which is why when we get to TFC, we're going to have a couple players on there that we're going to go, what?
Wait till we get to Montreal. There's a lot of Montreal that I'm like, what? Speaking of what?
Yeah.
Houston Dynamo, Duane. The list of unprotected players for Houston Dynamo is pretty extensive. A lot of free agents, a lot of international players, a lot of big names that are maybe not coming back to Houston. Just a free agent, DeMarcus Beasley, Ricardo Clark, AJ De La Garza. Duane, those are mainstays. They're names that we associate with Houston, especially like the Beasley, the Alex. You have like Ricardo Clark, Mr. Ricardo wearing a hat Clark, forever been playing for Houston. Bonic Garcia. Like, this is going to be a very different Houston team in a few weeks. But, there's going to be a big turnover.
Well, they were a lot older than people let on, or people sort of understood, because they looked at some of the key parts that did emerge this year, and they were a little bit younger. But if you looked at sort of their spine, they weren't exactly a young team, and we're seeing that with the amount of free agents they have on here. I know they're going to resign some of these guys, but by and large, you're right that this will be, not completely, but this will be a continuation of a remake of the club, and that might not be the worst, because we saw the players that came in last year and they did a job. Yeah. So to get rid of some of these older guys might actually make Houston take a next step. But in terms of anyone that might get picked here, there's no one jumping off.
I would take Alex. I would go with Alex just because of what Alex showed earlier this year when Kubo Torres and himself were on a run in the first 10 games of the season. Alex showed a lot of potential there, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Brazilian is chosen today by LAFC. And again, a Brazilian you bring into to LA, this could be a choice. But there's a few other names in here that could be tempting, like a Anibaba, but I doubt it. For me, it's Alex or maybe no one from Houston, but we'll see.
Andy Babel was the other player that I had in mind there. If you want to go to LA, is Jack Mack? Have you given up on Jack Mack yet?
It's another team that's given up on Jack Mack. It's been 5 now. So I don't see like Jermaine Jones
Jermaine Jones isn't interesting because he is. Look, is he retired? Is he not retired? It's a risk, but. It wouldn't shock me if Jermaine Jones ended up with LAFC in some capacity. Whether they take him today or not might not matter. But Jermaine Jones being in LA, wants to stay in LA. Do they want to take a risk on that? Does Bob Bradley think he can rein a guy like that in on an expansion team? That is an interesting sort of possibility, and I'm sure that a lot of people would be very intrigued if Jermaine Jones gets taken to the Galaxy. But at the same time, there comes a point where the Jermaine Jones show just becomes kind of boring.
Yeah.
It's like the Kardashians of MLS at this point, and maybe it's time to move on.
Well, he's in LA after all.
Say put him on the list because I wouldn't be stunned.
He's on my list. Now I've got 6 players, and we're going to continue. Minnesota. A lot of players in here that were taken last year I'm surprised are here. If you're looking at a Miguel Ibarra, it's quite interesting that Miguel Ibarra would be left unprotected. But there's other players on here. Yohan Venegas is not going to be taken, but the fact that Minnesota has not protected him gives us a little bit of maybe an indication of where things are going for next year. Same for Bernardo Arnor, and same for Vadim Demidov. Yes, the Demigov Demidov.
Well, no, he's not. there's a few TFC signings from back in the day that would be in the same conversation, but this that was not a good signing.
That was a
I like
terrible
Warner.
signing.
I've always liked Warner. So
Yeah,
so
but
maybe
poor
not,
guy.
but,
Like, every damn expansion draft he gets picked. The guy's got to move every single year. I feel like actually bad for Colin Warner. He's an amazing guy. He's fun to talk to. I had the chance to do so a few times. I kind of feel bad for him to always have to pack.
yeah. Venergassia might actually be the one player that I would pick above Warner, but I do think Warner has good. You never know. Anyway,
MLS
I'll
lifer
back-
experience, it's kind of necessary, and maybe that will be the choice of Bob Bradley. So let's now move to an interesting roster as well, the Montreal Impact. Duane, would you choose Patrice Bernier? Like, would you choose a retired player in the unprotected list?
Well, it's funny because if you look at LA's protected list, Robbie Rogers is listed as retired and automatically protected. But does that mean Patrice Bernier hasn't actually filed papers or something yet with them?
Same for Kamara?
I don't know.
Same for Kamara. Kamara's there. And Oyongo. Oyongo's protected, but he's in France and he's going to play for Montpellier. So why are you using a protected spot for Oyongo? There's something here that I don't get. There might be a financial incentive somewhere in the decisions for that roster. Maybe that's why Patrice Bernier and Kamara are on protected lists and not filed as automatically protected under retirement rules. I don't know. But there's something in here.
There's a player that jumps out at me that might actually get picked. And how is the pizza in LA?
Dominic Adjero? You think Dominic Adjero will be taking over maybe a Matteo Mancosu? Or
Duro has got an ability to score goals. Even now, and he's got speed. He's a useful piece for any kind of expansion team. I think that Aduro is kind of a logical fit for them in many, many ways.
Maybe it's just me, but I see a Michael Salazar as a younger version of Dominic Adjero, like a lot younger version of Dominic Adjero. And if I'm building a team, if I'm building a young team, and I'm thinking of the future of this team, and maybe a year or two down the road, I needed players that are almost there, players that have some experiences and some success, but still needs to learn a bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Salazar is picked by an LAFC.
Okay, fair enough. And we can put them both on the list and talk about it later, maybe. But I think that I think LA is going to approach this to be like Atlanta. So they're going to be looking for players in this expansion draft that might be able to provide depth and sort of bench options. And that's kind of how I'm approaching this, as opposed to the Minnesota approach, which I think was we're looking for, players that are going to play or prospects down the line. And I don't think LA going into that market with the money they're going to have is going to be taking that approach. That's kind of how I'm looking at this.
Yeah, New England. Let's go quickly. New England. Any name jump out at you? For me, there might be one. Chris Tierney. That could be maybe a good choice for LAFC. I said maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's not that player. You're right. But I don't think there's much on that list.
New York City FC. When we're looking at this list, anything jumping out at you? Frédéric Briand got traded yesterday, by the way. But in this list, that's kind of nothing there either.
Shelton, maybe. It's not a bad list. It's actually, I think they're in the position, NYC, based on this. They're not going to lose anything. That Lopez is not bad either. There's players on there, but I don't think there's anything that they're going to be overly concerned losing now.
Now we're going to New York on the other side, New Jersey, the other side of the Hudson. Anything jumping out at you? I kind of feel bad for De La Duca. De La Duca always appreciated his work in Montreal. Now finds himself a free agent. He's on the unprotected list, but could a De La Duca, could a Mike Grella, could a Connor Lade, maybe even a Damien Pirinel be a good choice for Bob Bradley?
Mike de Grella. I just like saying Mike de Grella.
Yeah, it's not a bad choice. So Red Bulls, I would go with Grella. That's probably would be mine as well. Now, we're getting closer to the end of this list, but we're getting to the O's, Orlando. Now, does it say anything?
I want to talk about the fact that Lauren's protected.
I know. That's what I was going to say. I was like, does it say anything that they protected Lauren? Does it mean that they don't want him to be picked because he knows he's going to be moving away in January and they want that money?
Yeah, that's what it means, pretty much. Philip Powers is an interesting player on this list.
Dylan Powers, former first-round draft pick for Colorado a few years ago. You're right. Dylan Powers would be maybe a player that I would go, or maybe a Josh Saunders. No, I wouldn't take Saunders. I would go for Powers. It's the only one that actually kind of makes sense at that one.
Fair enough.
Philly.
This one's got an interesting player on at the Union, but he's old, and that's kind of why maybe. And they assume he's not going to be taken, and he's also injury prone. And Adu is an interesting choice, though. Do you want to take a role on a former U.S. international player that had a high ceiling, but that's been basically dead for the last 2 years? I don't know. Maybe that'd be a crazy one. Cavell is the player that I would choose, though, more than anyone else on this list, as of having the possibility of having something you could make with him.
Oh, you wouldn't take a Oguchi Onyewu? Yeah, no, that it didn't turn out that well, did it?
I mean, like I said, the dude jumps out but think about it, dude. Like his career started, he was the TFC's first ever pick, so that's a while ago now. So it's been 11 years, so it's probably time for Maurice to move on. But nonetheless, that's sad days to see it end if it ends this way. Hopefully he can recover health-wise. That's really his main concern at this point.
Yeah, okay. So Portland, anything jumping out at you in Portland?
Jake Gleason's a decent shout if you're looking for something on that line.
That's where I was going. For me, it was Jake Gleason. Could have been a possibility. Outside of that, maybe an Abobi Okugo, but even then, you would go with maybe a more proven commodity here in the expansion draft. Like, Zarek Valentin for the future could be interesting, but he's just finding himself back again in North America after his year back this year. Yeah, Jake Gleason, if there's one pick from Portland, it could be Jake Gleason.
And RSL, I'd just like to point out Chad Barrett once again. When does Chad Barrett's career end? Anyway.
We should ask him. We should have him on the show. Like, come on, Chad. Call us.
I've interviewed Chad Barrett before. A long time ago now, but at any rate, he was a TFC player when I did. Ura, that was an intro. He never worked out there, but still there's talent. You might want to think about that.
Yeah, no, exactly. So when you're looking at RSL, Barrett wouldn't be the choice for me. When I'm looking at RSL's actual roster and unprotected players, there's nothing that actually would be worth, because you have to think, there's only 5, right? So from pick one, that's why we're doing this exercise, because we'll pick 5 out of those. But RSL, nothing really jumping out at me.
Sure. All right, San Jose, which
but there's if it was 2 years ago, I would take an Ameriqua. Yeah, if it was 2 years ago, but now I don't know. Let's put Ameriqua, because it's a name, right? And sometimes that's what you want, a name, so you have value coming back to you. So Ameriqua.
Yeah, I'm looking at Seattle. Maybe you take another Rollins ship. This is again a guy that had a high ceiling at one point, and you maybe think that you can rescue him. Maybe you think that there's something there that you can save. Harry Ship's career has gone from, he started from the top and now he's here, basically, right? So, but there's been something just like Jack Mack that people see in him that makes people keep trying again and again with him. So that's maybe why Harry Ship might be the player that Seattle might lose in this.
There's big names, though. If you're looking at Ozzie Alonso is left unprotected. Do they know something we don't? Retirement maybe is coming soon for Alonso. We don't know. There's one thing I mentioned after the game on Saturday is, for me, Seattle, it's a transition moment right now for Seattle. Their window is closed, and I think the Dempsey era and the Ozzie Alonso era is over. And I think now it's going to transition to a new crop of players that will be performing for the next 7 to 10 years, but you will have transition right now.
Now that they lost the game, had they somehow found a way to win, then maybe you go, okay, well, they do the tight defensive line, it's older for sure. I mean, Chad Marshall is going to retire eventually. Maybe it's going to work. But then you look at the fact that the West had an overall down year. You look at the fact that LAFC is probably going to come in and pull in Atlanta and be more competitive there. You think Portland, with the change in direction slightly, is probably going to revitalize themselves.
Which we don't even know the coach yet, by the way. And I have a theory, and I think that theory, we should talk about it this week. But yeah, Portland's interesting in the coaching situation.
So at any rate, I don't think that they're, bad, Seattle, but yeah, I don't think that their championship opportunity, I think, is running out right now. And again, if you look at the last 2 years as a whole in the final and seeing how much Toronto dominated them in both games. Yeah, Seattle won the skill competition in 2016, and they did what they had to do to win that trophy. But let's look at the two games as a whole and really start to evaluate where they stand in terms of how they match up against TFC, which right now is the marker, and they're not there. They 2 shots and goals in 2 years.
Yeah.
That says something.
Anyone you would pick from SKC?
And they weren't close
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
that's
Shield. And that's the measure. They're talking after the game. I'm hearing them. We need to get back. We need to host this game next year. Well, you're going to need to make up 10 points. And that's a lot in MLS. And you're just not close. So they're going to have, if they want to do that, they can't with the roster they have. So you're right in that regard. The Seattle is a damn good team, but they're not the best team, and I think maybe they recognize that too. And I suspect you'll see some changes there. And you know, how much longer can Dempsey go? We'll see. But he didn't make a difference on the game weekend, right?
No, he had more influence last year not playing, but that's something because he was motivating at least people. SKC, anyone jumping out at you? We have three teams left to talk about. Anyone from SKC you would take? Like Kenwin Jones, he's retiring. Like he got traded, but we all know he's retiring. You mentioned it after the game, well, before the game, and he retires, and now he gets traded. And anyways, anyone you would take from Kansas City? I'm saying no.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
me.
there's a lot of decent players there, but I think if you're looking at just 5 in this whole list, there's probably going to be others that jump out a little bit more. I mean, I just want to say Cameron Porter just because we keep talking about all these former Montreal players that are somehow in this expansion draft.
I know, right? There's a ton. Every team has a former Montreal players. How many former Montreal players are in the league? Like that's an exercise we should do one day.
Yeah, precisely here. Okay, this is the one that.
There's interesting names here. Let's just put it this way, Duane. It's too bad.
Raheem Edwards.
Well, yeah, that's where I was going to say, Duane.
But he's Canadian, but he's going to be an international for them, and that's something you have to factor in.
It's too bad that he doesn't
and
quite
Raheem
fit into the homegrown rules. That's
Well,
unfortunate.
he
should, but he doesn't. But there's a chance Toronto might lose him because of that. Or maybe Clint Irwin. Not a lot of goalkeepers on their list. And LA is going to need a goalie. And Clint Irwin is going to need to move because he wants to play.
Yeah, we've been saying that for a while. The 2 best players, I think, for TFC on here, if they were American, I think either Edwards. Edwards, I think, might be a no-brainer if he was American. And I suspect that the reason he has been left open is because he's Canadian, and they're assuming that they're not going to pick him. Toussaint would be another interesting player for many of the same reasons I've talked about. He's older, but he can be a bench presence. He can provide some pace off the wing for them late in games. You know, you look at the free agents on this team, and Drew Moore's not going to get picked because he's a free agent, so relax there. Same with Steven Beitashour. I suspect that both of those players will re-sign for next year. There's a lot of talk about the CCL that I think the free agents are going to be highly motivated to figure out how to fit themselves into the cap. Irwin is the natural choice otherwise. But I wouldn't be shocked, that said, if they did take a run at Edwards because he is such a young, promising player.
Not just that, Duane. For Toronto, he's important. And if you pick him, you might get something back if you want to trade it back to Toronto. You might get a little something.
Yeah. Which, again, was when I was talking about the Manning interview. It wouldn't shock me if Toronto has something lined up already, just like they did last year when Clint Irwin was the player picked. And we'll find out soon enough, which brings us to the other Canadian team here now, does not.
Yeah, and there's a few interesting names here as well. Canadian content as well. But here are the unprotected names. There's a few. There's a Matias Laba available. There's a David Ousted, goalkeeper as well, available. Mauro Rosales. There's a Breck Shea available as well. Sheenan Williams, Marcel De Jong. Bolaños is left unprotected as well. A lot of possible choices from Vancouver. And honestly, I can almost guarantee there will be one Vancouver player picked because of the crop that is in there right now.
I would be pretty surprised if Laba isn't that player. He's playing a role, a tough 6, a grinder 6 that can be very effective. He was hurt this year. Vancouver figured out how to play in a different style without him. I think they want to play a slightly different way, which makes Laba less important for them. They don't want to pay him the money that they would have had to, which is the main reason he was left off this. But to leave him exposed, that is going to be a difficult thing, I think, for Bradley to basically he's a lesser version of his son. And I think that's.
Do you think it's going to be
logical
okay?
fit there.
Matthias, welcome to the club. Welcome to the team. Here's a big razor. Go to the bathroom, shave your head, come back, and you'll be my midfield player. No, I'm just saying. But for me, there's one name that I think might be taken, and it's taking things into consideration. What does LA feel like a market? It's the market of stars. It's a big market. You need big players, names, recognition you need in LA.
Shea?
You need a few U.S. men's national team, at least French players, maybe even too.
Maybe not now.
Not now, but maybe a Breck Shea. Maybe Breck will be a choice for Vancouver. Well,
With
for LA
both
from
Shea
Vancouver.
and Lab. Yeah, with both Shea and Laba, the issue there is, and this is another factor you always have to consider when you're doing this, is sometimes these guys are going to pick players that are only paid like 60, 70,000, and you'll go, why him? But it's because they're looking at him as value for money. So, like, when you pick Shea, if you pick Shea, you're going to have to pick his salary up. That's the rule of this thing, right? If you don't pick Shea, then you don't have to worry about that salary. The same with Laba, which they haven't, Vancouver can renegotiate the contract with both of these guys. That's why they've been left unprotected. They're making a gamble that they can maybe get them at a lower number or move them through a trade in some way. And that could be the other thing, again, as we're talking with Vancouver here, is they could have already spoken to Mr. Bradley, and they could have something in place, or they're leaving some bigger names exposed, knowing full well who they're going to pick, so that then they can protect their younger players to, prevent any funny business happening. And also there's a little bit of politics that goes on to who you protect too, in terms of internal politics, because you could go to your veteran players and go, okay, here's the situation. You're going to be left unprotected, but this is why, because we have this set up. So don't freak out when this happens.
Don't get angry. Don't call me. Don't say, why did you leave me unprotected?
Yeah.
What did I do to you? Why am I in the doghouse?
Exactly. Whereas a younger player might be a little more, little less able to handle that.
Duane, if you,
So yeah, there's.
you might be going to LA. You might be going to live in LA. It ain't that bad.
Precisely, I guess. Yeah. Well, maybe not right now. I mean, if
Yeah, true.
with the fires and all that, but that's
yes.
stuff we can't really help.
That's true. By the way, thoughts to everyone affected by the fires. A few collaborators of the show were affected. So thoughts to you, everyone out there. Duane, we have our list. We need 5 of those. Let's just start with one that we both agree will probably be chosen. Bill Hamid by LAFC.
I think that if you're looking at Hamid's overall work as a keeper, it'd be hard to ignore him if you're looking for a keeper to start. And whether or not they've got an arrangement in place now where they're trading Hamid to him essentially, and there's going to be some kind of something back to them, like there's always scratch back deals that happen in these things, then yeah, I think Hamid is a logical choice to go there. Kevin, I do believe strongly that Labo will be picked for a lot of the reasons that I said just a moment ago. So I don't know whether you want to include him, but he's on my list.
Let's include it. It's a collaboration. So Bill and me, we agree. Laba, I have to agree too. Between Laba and Shea, maybe Laba makes sense. So Laba, and I do feel strongly too. Maybe I'm wrong here, but there's the youth aspect of this player too. Kind of feel Alex from Houston will be picked today.
All right, I'll give you that one. I believe that they're going to look for some veteran bench strength as well, which is why I'm going to go all the way back to one of the first players. Well, I'm going to go all the way back to the first player that we talked about here,
Peterson,
which is Jacob Peterson. Yeah, I think that he makes a lot of sense because of his ability to come off the bench, his ability to be a veteran on a team and to provide. And he's gone through another expansion process as well, which I think can help people settle. And I think there's some value in that. That might not be completely understood.
And we'll see if we agree with this. But the fifth name in our list of 5 players that might be moving today might be chosen by LAFC. From Toronto, Canadian players Raheem Edwards.
Okay, yeah, I'll put that on there. Yeah,
Do we have an alternate?
Young player,
Should we put an alternate in? Yeah, let's put an alternate.
Gleason
There you go.
instead of Hamid. Because if Hamid could be traded back or something, yeah. Look, when I look at the young players on this list, if you're looking at players under the age of 23, say, I think Edwards might be the best long-term prospect, and the only thing that really might hold them back again is that passport issue. But if you think he's good enough, for one of your international spots, then hey. And if you could also do something like pick another player that we're not expecting here, and then trade him immediately back for an international spot, so you could take a swinger on one of the young Canadians or a young international that's out there. So that's kind of where I'd go with that. So it's going to be an interesting day that way. Only 5 players. It's kind of weird because I'm used to, like, I saw expansion drafts where 20 players were picked, where you knew you were losing a player.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's like you can hope you're not.
Well, that's kind of the new way too, right? It's because of the academies, because of all the different drafts and different rules and free agency and everything surrounding this expansion draft. So no, it'll be interesting. We'll follow this later today. Yes, there's the Champions League draw that was done yesterday. We know the matchup of the knockout stage. We wanted to talk about it today, but time is escaping from us because we talked way too much about the expansion draft. But that's what a draft does to us. It gets our nerdy, geeky side out, and we talk about possibilities. But Duane, how about we say goodbye for today? We enjoyed the draft this afternoon. Talk about it tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll break down the Champions League draw, which I have to say, wow, what a draw.
Wow, PSG versus Real Madrid, obviously that's the one everyone's talking about.
You were talking about Chelsea Barcelona. No, Chelsea Barcelona is the one I'm looking forward to. Or not.
Basel and Man City was talking about everything coming up Duane this week.
Yeah, everything's coming up Duane. Woohoo!
All right.
And until next time,
Kevin, as always,
you can follow Millhouse at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Until tomorrow, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.